back, everyone, to the 3 Minutes on the Clock podcast. Now, today we have another NFL mock draft, but I'm doing something a little bit different. And it's not going to be a 2019 NFL mock. It's going to be a 2021. Yes, I understand the 2019 draft hasn't happened yet, and I still plan on uploading a couple more mock drafts for that. However, I just uploaded one last weekend, and I want to do something a little bit different. So I hope you guys enjoy this one. Should be pretty fun. Yeah, it is sort of basically guessing. But chances are most of these picks will not happen. And the order that I put the teams in, just take it for a grain of salt. If you think your team is picking too low, it's not really that big of a deal. Like, I think I have the Titans picking at like 12. Yeah, that's a little bit harsh to the Titans, but I'll have an official NFL prediction video up in a couple of months. Also, trades will be a thing. I think I only had one. And we're also going to pretend that my last mock draft happened. So basically, Arizona gets a new quarterback, Miami, Washington, New England, the Chargers, the Bengals, and the Broncos, they all picked or traded for quarterbacks within the first 3 rounds. So none of those teams will be getting quarterbacks. Just figured I'd throw that out there so you guys understood. The only trade I made involved this number 1 overall pick. I have it originally belonging to the Dolphins, however, it will be traded to the New York Giants, as I had Miami trading up in my last mock to get Dwayne Haskins, so quarterback isn't really a need. Meanwhile, for the Giants, they did not get one, so it absolutely is a need for them. I have the Dolphins acquiring the 4th overall pick from the Giants, as well as their next 2 second-round picks, a future 4th and a current 5th. Current as in 2020, and then future as in 2021. And then I had the Giants selecting Tua Tagovailoa, quarterback from Alabama. This is a very good quarterback class, at least at the top. You have Tua, Justin Herbert, Jake Fromm. However, of those 3, at least right now, I think Tua is the most likely one to go number 1. He is actually my number 3 quarterback behind Herbert and Fromm, and I'm just not that high on Tua. I think he's going to be a good player, but I don't think he's worthy of this number 1 overall pick. Yeah, he's a proven winner, but I'm not huge on his arm strength. I don't know if it's quite NFL caliber. Somewhat mobile, pretty accurate, and he is a winner. He knows how to win in big games. I think he will be a good player, however, I'm not sold on him quite yet. Right now, I am not high on the Bucs' chances this year, and I'm also not super high on Jameis Winston. And it's not that I don't think he can be a starting quarterback, but I just don't think him and the Bucs are really working out. So I have the Bucs letting him go this coming off season, which would be the 2021. And then I have them selecting Justin Herbert, quarterback Oregon. This is currently my number 1 quarterback in the class. Biased Ducks fan, maybe, but Herbert is the most mobile of the top 3. He has a pretty good arm, and I think he's the most well-rounded of the group. He might not have the upside that the other 2 have, however, I do think they all are similar in upside, and I just think he's the best pro prospect of the 3. I think Justin Herbert will do very well in Tampa Bay, along with Bruce Arians for the next few seasons, as Arians isn't particularly young, and I don't think he will be coaching in 10 years from now. But I think this is a really good pick for Tampa Bay. Just forgetting about Jameis Winston, that didn't work out, and I think this will work out. I have the Bengals getting Jerry Jeudy, wide receiver from Alabama. Yeah, this might be a little bit harsh putting the Bengals at 3, however, I'm not high on them this year. And as I said, take this order for a grain of salt. I will have a more detailed NFL predictions video out later, and I don't think the Bengals will be the 3rd worst record. But anyway, I did have them drafting Will Grier in round 2, so quarterback isn't technically a need. I'm not personally high on Will Grier, however, they don't really need one if this were to happen. And I have them getting one of the better players on the board in Jerry Jeudy. Maybe not the best. There are some probably better prospects. However, I do think the Bengals could use another receiver. A.J. Green isn't getting any younger. Tyler Boyd will be a free agent in the 2020 offseason. And John Ross didn't really work out. I think Jeudy is a very well-rounded player, one of the best receiving prospects to come out in the past few years. I think he's better than DK Metcalf, and I really like DK Metcalf, so that says something. And I think this is a really good pick at 3 for the Bengals. I have the Dolphins getting Walker Little, offensive tackle from Stanford. Many people think the Fins will be the worst team in the NFL this year, and I don't doubt that. I think Ryan Fitzpatrick is a quality sort of starter. and I don't know if the Dolphins will actually be as bad as everyone says. However, they just don't have one of the best rosters in the league, and I did have them trading down. They got the next 2 second-round picks from the Giants, as well as a future 4 and a current 5. A lot of assets that the Dolphins are getting. However, that won't really matter since this is only a 1-round mock. And I've been getting Walker Little, offensive tackle from Stanford. Very good player. Juwan James just left in free agency. Laramie Tunsil only has 2 years left on his deal, assuming the Dolphins accept his 5th-year team option, which I expect they will. Walker Little is one of the best players in this draft class, and I think this is a really good draft for the Dolphins if they can get all that assets and still end up with Walker Little. I have the Buffalo Bills getting Chase Young, edge rusher from Ohio State, the first defensive player off the board. This class is definitely better on the offensive side of the ball, at least in my opinion, whereas the current 2019 class is pretty much defense. And while I do really like Josh Allen, big fan of him coming out of Wyoming, he was my #1 quarterback in last year's class, I just don't think the Bills have a good enough supporting cast around him to succeed. I think they have a lot of talented players, especially on defense. Tre'Davious White. I have them drafting Ed Oliver, Tremaine Edmonds, who I think had a really underrated rookie season. However, I just don't see this team putting it together yet. I think they are a few pieces away, and I think another good pass rusher can do that. And when I say another, the Bills have some decent pass rushers. Trent Murphy, Shaq Lawson if he develops correctly. But I think they could use an extra one, and I think Chase Young makes sense at this spot. I had the Redskins selecting Drew Lock in my latest mock draft, so why not pair him with a really nice receiver? LAVISKA Shenaults Jr. from Colorado. Very speedy, very explosive. I really like him. I don't like him as much as Jerry Jeudy, however, there aren't many receiving prospects out there better than Jeudy, and I really like this selection for Washington. They have not had a really good receiver since probably Santana Moss, and I think this is a home run selection, getting Drew Lock a really good target. They just lost Jamison Crowder, who I think is a very underrated player. All they have is the injury-prone Paul Richardson, and that's about it, so I think they could use someone else. Shenault can stretch the field, and I just think this makes a ton of sense for Washington. New city, new quarterback. The 2020 season will be the first one that the Raiders play in Las Vegas, and why not pull the trigger on a new quarterback? I like Derek Carr as a starting caliber player in the NFL, however, I'm not sold on the fact that John Gruden and Mike Mayock think he's their guy. I'm not entirely sure if Derek Carr is the future of that team, and with Jake Fromm on the board at 7, I think the Raiders are going to pull the trigger. A flashy pick, get more fans in Vegas interested now that they have a rookie quarterback. And I don't have a Derek Carr trade in this mock, however, you can put one in the comments if you want. And I think this pick makes sense for Oakland. They've definitely improved this offseason. Antonio Brown, Tyrell Williams, Trent Brown, LaMarcus Joyner, 3 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks. I think the Raiders have a very interesting roster. And I just don't think that John Gruden thinks Derek Carr is the guy. And with Jake Fromm at 7, I think this is nice value for him. And I'm very curious to see how the Raiders do the next few seasons. I have the Cardinals selecting Andrew Thomas, offensive tackle from Georgia. I expect him to play tackle at the next level. The Cardinals need to improve their offensive line. They have DJ Humphries at one of the tackle spots, who's an okay young player, but he will have 1 more year on his contract as of this time next season. And then, I can't even tell you who their left tackle is if I tried. So, the Cardinals need work on their offensive line. And I think Kyler Murray, if they get him, which that's what I mocked, then I think Kyler Murray's going to need an offensive line around him. I don't think he's like Russell Wilson, where he can make his own play even with so many defenders going after him. I think Kyler Murray is used to the lack of defense in the Big 12, and it's very different in the NFL, and I think the Cardinals have to build a good offensive line around him for him to succeed. Von Miller and Bradley Chubb together are scary, but what about Derrick Brown inside? That is frightening. I had Derrick Brown mocked to the Atlanta Falcons in my very first mock draft. However, he announced he's staying for his senior season. And I do think this is probably the best player available on most people's boards in this situation. And I think the Broncos could use an extra defensive tackle. I think their pass rush will be scary, as Derrick Brown is a very big human, very good run stuffer, pretty athletic, and I like this pick for Denver continuing to build in the trenches. I think the Lions have a very good chance to be pretty good next season, and obviously as a Lions fan, I'm definitely hoping so. And I really want to get Devin White at 8. There are a number of players I'd be happy with, but I'd be low-key disappointed if we didn't get White. And while I did mock us to get Rashawn Gary, it doesn't hurt to get a different LSU defender that would make me very happy, Grant Delpit. He might be my #1 player in the class, at least right now. He has been very good at LSU. You can use him in a number of ways in the secondary, at safety, at corner, both of which are positions of need for the Lions, and I think adding him would totally revamp a somewhat weak secondary. Yeah, there are some good players in there. Big Play Slay, the signing of Justin Coleman, Quandre Diggs. They're solid, but I think Grant Delpit can make the secondary one of the better ones in the NFL, continuing to improve the lackluster defense that has been lackluster for so long now. I think Rashawn Gary or Devin White or anyone we draft at 8, as well as someone like Grant Delpit, I think this Lions defense can become very good in a short amount of time. Here's a lot of drama involving Russell Wilson and the Seattle Seahawks. Wilson wants a new contract. He has set a deadline for April 15th, which is next Monday. And apparently there have been rumors that he wants out of Seattle. And I do think the Seahawks will find a way to bring him back. And that's why they're not going quarterback here. And there's also not any quarterback who is worthy, on the board at least, who should be picked at this spot. So I have him getting Raekwon Davis from Alabama. I have had him going in the first round of 2019 mocks before he announced he was staying for his senior season. And I think he's going to have a big year this year at Alabama as the primary defensive lineman for probably the first time in his career. They've had guys like Quinnen Williams, Daron Payne inside in the past, but now I think that's his line. I think he's going to have a very good season, and I think Seattle could use help in the interior of their defensive line. I like Jerron Reed, another former Alabama defensive tackle, might I add, but he will be a free agent at the end of the 2020 season, and even so, they could use someone else next to him, and I think that can be Raekwon Davis. I think the Titans could be very good this year. I also think they could struggle, and if they do struggle, then I think Tyler BIADASZ is a very good prize for struggling. I think Tyler BIADASZ is a very good player, probably would be a top 20 pick if he declared for this year's draft, which he was eligible. He can play guard, he can play center, and the Titans could use a lot of help in the interior of their offensive line. They signed Roger Saffold, but their interior is not great. Tyler BIADASZ, very good run blocker for Jonathan Taylor, who you will see picked very shortly. And I think this is a really nice pick for Tennessee. Good value and position of need. One of my favorite players in this year's, or next year's, draft class is Dylan Moses, the linebacker from Alabama. I have him going to the Steelers, who could use help at linebacker. Dylan Moses can play in coverage at middle linebacker. He can also rush the quarterback as an edge rusher. Sound familiar? Sounds a lot like Josh Allen, who will probably be a top 5 pick in this year's draft class. I think Dylan Moses is very similar to him, and I think Dylan Moses has a chance to be a top 5 or 10 pick next season. I don't see him dropping past 13, and the Steelers, who could use a linebacker, as I don't expect Ryan Shazier to ever come back, unfortunately, as much as I would like to see that. I think Dylan Moses is a really good value pick. I had them selecting Joe Giles Harris from Duke in the second round of my last mock draft, so I think the two of them could be a pretty nice pairing. As a Detroit Lions fan, please do not let this happen. Jonathan Taylor to the Green Bay Packers. I really like Taylor. Yeah, he does have probably the best offensive line in college football. However, he's still been a very good running back at his time with Wisconsin. They are a run-first team, and they know how to develop good running backs. Melvin Gordon, I think, has been a very productive player in the NFL, and I don't think he gets enough credit. And yeah, they've developed some bad ones too, like Monte Ball. However, I think Jonathan Taylor will be really good at the next level. Pairing him in Green Bay, who is also dealing with some drama, as Aaron Rodgers is reportedly a toxic teammate, which, as a Lions fan, the more drama up there, the better. However, I think Jonathan Taylor will make that offense even more scary than it already is. I had him going Noah Fant with my 12th overall pick, which I also, as a Lions fan, would be very sad about that. So Aaron Rodgers along with Jonathan Taylor, Noah Fant, and the weapons they already have like Devontae Adams, that is frightening. I'm going to be honest, I have no clue how good the Jaguars are going to be this season. They could be really bad, they could be really good, they could be average. Who knows? They are maybe one of the most interesting teams in the NFL, and probably their most interesting character is Jalen Ramsey, who's a very good player. Him and A.J. Bouye are quite the duo. However, there have been Jalen Ramsey trade rumors, and at this point, he will have 1 year left on his contract, and I can't imagine A.J. Bouye will have much longer left on his either. And even so, they could use a third cornerback anyway. So I have them getting C.J. Henderson from Florida. Very underrated in my opinion. Does not get talked a lot about, and I do think he is quite a good player. Continuing to build in the secondary. They have Ronnie Harrison, who I like, and that's really their only young developmental player. They could use a safety since they cut to Sean Gibson. But other than that, I think the Jaguars' defense has a chance to be as good as it was in 2017 if they can keep Ramsey, add someone like C.J. Henderson, and continue to improve it. The Cowboys just paid DeMarcus Lawrence for big bucks yesterday. I think he got like 6 years, $105 million, which is a very good move, I think, for both sides. However, the Cowboys could use an extra pass rusher. David Irving was sort of a hybrid end and defensive tackle, but he's no longer on the team because he likes smoking weed too much. And I'm going to have them selecting A.J. ESPENESA from Iowa. I think him and DeMarcus Lawrence can be a very good tandem in Dallas for a while. I do think both of their contracts will probably end around the same time, so the Cowboys might have to choose, and if A.J. ESPENESA is good, they'd probably choose him because he's younger. However, I think DeMarcus Lawrence can complement ESPENESA very well. I think DeMarcus Lawrence will make ESPENESA better, as Lawrence will be drawing a lot of double teams and less focus will be on ESPENESA, so this is a good fit for him. And I think the Cowboys have a pretty good chance to do good next year. I think they're building their defense very nicely. Their defensive line is solid. They have a pretty good secondary. Guys like Chidobe Awuzie, Byron Jones, and then Leighton Vander Esch leading the linebacking core. Leighton Vander Esch is a phenomenal player. I think he has a chance to win Defensive Player of the Year within the next few seasons. And watch out for Dallas, man. If Dak Prescott can develop correctly, watch out for them these next few seasons. The Ravens do not have a lot of great targets for Lamar Jackson, and I have them getting one here in the big-bodied Collin Johnson. Probably could have been a late first-round pick, however, he decided to stay in school. Big body, good red zone threat, good jump ball radius for Lamar Jackson, who's not the most accurate, and entering the 2020 season, he will probably be more accurate, but I can't imagine he'll be great with it. I think this pick makes a ton of sense for Baltimore. Solid value, but it fits a big need. San Francisco 49ers secondary is very weird, in my opinion. They got some decent players. Adrian Colbert at 3 safety, nah. DeForest Buckner, no. Jaquiski Tart at strong safety, pretty good. They got Richard Sherman at corner, but outside of that, they could use some work. I did have them drafting Trayvon Mullen in the 2nd round, so just remember that. However, I do think they could use another defensive back, so I have them getting Isaiah Simmons from Clemson. Hasn't really been talked about a lot, not a crazy big role for them, but I think with Trayvon Mullen, another Clemson Tiger, gone, I think he will have a much bigger role this season, and the Niners could surprise some people the next couple of years if Jimmy Garoppolo plays well and recovers from his ACL tear successfully. Like Jacksonville, Carolina is also in a weird spot where who knows how good they will do, but regardless of that, they need extra help on their defensive line. Julius Peppers finally called it quits, and they don't really have much outside of that. Vernon Butler looks like a bust. Mario Addison, is he still there? He's just an overall meh player. I had them drafting Ja'Kai Polite, but I don't think he will be enough. Polite in the 2nd round, by the way, not the 1st round. Ja'Kai Polite's not going to be a 1st-round pick. But I think they absolutely need more help on their defensive line. I think Nick Coe can play tackle as well as edge, and I think this is a very nice pick for Carolina. Similar to Isaiah Simmons, I think Kristian Fulton will have a much bigger role with guys like Greedy Williams gone. And the Jets could really surprise some people this season. I really like what they've done this offseason. I think the signing of C.J. Mosley was quite underrated. They've added Le'Veon Bell. They've added, Jamison Crowder. They have a top 3 pick. I think the Jets, if Sam Darnold plays well, could be a wild card team. And I had them in this just missing the playoffs. But as I said earlier, take the order for a grain of salt. And I have them getting Fulton. I think they could use more defensive backs. Marcus May isn't great. The Tremaine Johnson signing didn't really work out. And all they really have in their secondary is Jamal Adams. So I think we'll have an incredible season next year. I am very high on him. I don't really have to go into much detail with this pick because we all know the Texans need offensive line. I had Jonah Williams somehow slipping to 23 in my last mock, but they need more. So I have them getting MEKHI Becton. I hope I said his first name right. From Louisville. They need to help Deshaun Watson. He's getting knocked down way too many times, and he could very well re-injure that ACL if the Texans don't figure out that front 5. I had the Vikings getting 3 offensive linemen in my last mock, so they're not going to pick on everyone here. I have them selecting Paddy Fisher, linebacker from Northwestern. Eric Kendrick, solid. Anthony Barr, solid and a little bit overpaid in my opinion. But the Vikings could use another guy, and Fisher, very solid for the Northwestern defense. I think the Vikings will either be really good or really disappointing this upcoming season. And I think this is a very nice pick to improve their defense regardless of how good they are. I think the Falcons could use work in the secondary, mainly cornerback, which is where I'd expect A.J. Terrell to play. Sort of like his teammate, Isaiah Simmons. I think he'll have a bigger role this season. Falcons are pretty good at safety. They got my boy Keanu Neal. DeMonte Casey played pretty well last season, but they could use help at corner. Brian Poole's gone. Robert Alford's gone. Desmond Trufant's good, but is injury prone. And I could see the Falcons picking a corner in the first round this season, even though I've barely seen it in mocks. I do think it makes sense. And while I think I had them going with Christian Wilkins, probably, I can check. I had them going with Christian Wilkins. They're going to need to get another cornerback sooner rather than later, and I think A.J. Terrell can be their guy. Raiders didn't really improve their defensive line that much in free agency. I had them going with Josh Allen, DeAndre Baker, and Cody Ford in round 1. Josh Allen, not really a defensive lineman, and then obviously the other 2 aren't, so they need to improve their front 4, and I had them getting Kenny WILLEKESE, I probably butchered that, from Michigan State. I'd like to note that that is a really good-looking picture, so good finding on my part, but the Raiders need to improve that. They have Mo Hurst, who I like. They have P.J. Hall, who had an okay rookie season, but they could use some extras. So Kenny WILLEKESE, I know I butchered that, can probably be that guy. This is a little bit of a weird pick, but it's also quite interesting. I think this is very good value for Indianapolis, late in the first round, getting J.K. Dobbins, who I think is a really good running back, and I think he'll be very good in the NFL. The Colts have Marlon Mack. They have Nyheim Hines. So why get another running back? Well, I'm not sold on Marlon Mack as a main guy. He was solid last year, but I feel like we need to see more consistency out of him. And if he's good this year, then there's no need to make this selection. However, not to mention, Marlon Mack will be a free agent after the 2021 season, which basically, as of the 2020 draft, he'll have 1 year left on his contract. And then Nyheim Hines, Jordan Wilkins, they're good extra guys, but none of them are bell cow running backs. And I think J.K. Dobbins absolutely can be a bell cow running back. He's a solid receiver as well, or a solid pass catcher. I'm not saying you play him on the outside. He can also return kicks and punts, and I think this is a very interesting pick for the Colts, continuing to improve their offense, get another weapon for Andrew Luck. The Browns' secondary, outside of Denzel Ward, is not great. They traded away Jabril Peppers. They let Derrick Kindred go. They just acquired Eric Murray from the Chiefs. Wow, big move. I think the Browns need to sign Eric Berry. That would be a bigger safety named Eric from the Chiefs. But they could use some corners alongside Denzel Ward, and Chase Lucas is a very solid player. Definitely the best cornerback on the board at this point. And if the Browns can focus on their defense now, I think their offense is pretty much set. But if they can focus on their defense, I think they can have a really good chance to become a dynasty, or they'll be like the Cleveland Browns and find a way to mess this up. ANFERNEE Jennings is a very intriguing prospect. He's sort of similar to his teammate Dylan Moses, where you can put him on the edge, you can put him inside. However, I view Dylan Moses more as a linebacker and Jennings more as an edge guy. The Eagles could use both linebackers and edge rushers, so they could put ANFERNEE Jennings at either one of those spots. I have them focusing on offense with their first 2 picks in my latest mock, having them getting Dalton Risner and one of our running backs. I think it was Damian Harris. Was it Damian Harris? It was Damian Harris. So I think they could work on their front 7, and I think this is pretty solid value late in the first round for ANFERNEE Jennings. Next season, the Chiefs will definitely miss for production from Kareem Hunt, and I have them getting a running back here in the late first round, Travis Etienne from Clemson. Very good production at Clemson. I think there are a number of running backs who you could look at with this spot. Someone like DeAndre Swift from Georgia, I think that's his name. A.J. Dillon from Boston College, Dolphins franchise. But I think Travis Etienne is the best one on the board in this situation. And I think the Chiefs were obviously really hoping that J.K. Dobbins would fall this far. He didn't, so Etienne is the next best thing. He's been very good at Clemson. He was really good in the national championship. And I think this is a really nice selection for Kansas City. They will need to pay Patrick Mahomes, and I assume by this time next season, there's a good chance that Mahomes will be paid. However, the Chiefs need to get him a really good running back regardless. The Chargers really need linebackers, they really need defensive tackles, they really need offensive line, and other than that, they are set. Remember, I did have them drafting Daniel Jones. Now, in the first round, I had them getting Jerry Tillery, so defensive tackle's not really a need. I had them trading up in the second round to get Jones. So, that just leaves offensive line and linebacker. And I have them getting Tommy Kramer, an offensive lineman from Notre Dame. The Fighting Irish know how to make good NFL offensive linemen. Just look at the 2018 NFL Draft. 2 Notre Dame offensive linemen were picked in the top 10 in Quentin Nelson and Mike McGlinchey, and both of them were awesome as rookies. So I think Tommy Kramer can be very good as well for this Chargers team that is just a few pieces away from really being legit contenders for the Super Bowl. If the Rams want to continue to be good for a while, I think they need to make improvements to their defense. They got Aaron Donald on the D-line, so D-line isn't a big deal. Secondary, I think, is a bigger issue than most people think, at least long-term. I think their only legit defensive back they got is John Johnson, not high on Marcus Peters, and then Eric Weddle and Aqib Talib are old. And then linebacker as well. I like Samson Akubum, but I'm not high on Dante Fowler. I'm not that high on Corey Littleton. So I think the Rams could go in a number of directions, but I have them getting Malik Harrison from Ohio State. They could go with someone like Shaq Quarterman here, who I like a little bit more, and hint, hint, he'll be the very next pick. But I still think Harrison makes plenty of sense here at 30. I had the Patriots getting Shaq Quarterman, linebacker from Miami. The dude next to him on the left is Michael Pickney, who I think could also be a somewhat high pick, probably second round. However, I really like Shaq Quarterman inside linebacker, not inside like defensive tackle. But Dante Hightower isn't really a middle linebacker anymore. They have Jawan Bentley, who was good for about 3 games before getting hurt, and they need someone next to him, and I think that can be Shaq Quarterman, who's been very productive in his career with the Miami Hurricanes, and I really like this value for New England. Saints probably have the best head-to-toe roster in the league. However, Drew Brees is 40-41, obviously not getting any younger, and they need a new heir apparent for him. And I've been selecting Shea Patterson, quarterback from Michigan. Now, this is assuming Patterson has a big year, which there's no guarantee with that. Michigan has sort of underperformed at the quarterback position the past couple seasons with Jim Harbaugh. Patterson was pretty good last year, however, I need to see him play well for another year to make me totally convinced that he's a first-round prospect. However, Drew Brees is going to retire within the next 5 seasons, most likely. Yes, 5. Maybe he'll play till he's 45. Who knows? But I think the Saints need to address quarterback regardless, and Shea Patterson will be the pick here. So that'll end the episode. Hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. I believe I will be premiering the Dolphins franchise Super Bowl today. I think that'll be the other upload. If not, the other upload will be Diamondbacks. Not entirely sure yet. I'll probably leave a comment, so you will probably know at this point. And if you made it to the end of the video, make sure to type in yummy eggplants in the comments. Why? Because I told you to do it. Just don't mind if that's weird. Just do it and you're a cool kid.